So today we're gonna talk a little bit about life force and the way to manage them, the way to channel them into the right direction, and humans' faculty of reasoning. Okay, so there's two aspects of this. I'll give you an example. There's this philosopher named Schopenhauer. I believe 17th century. He's a 17th century or 18th century German philosopher. He's famous for his pessimistic philosophy, right? So a lot of his philosophy has to do with his personality. Like Nietzsche said, people's philosophy, they're always originated from their personality, their early life experience, their everything about you can't separate those two. Their life experience and their philosophy is really close. It can't be separated. So basically, why I bring out that example is because when you sitting there, when you dedicate your whole life to a certain philosophy, when you reason, when you lean to the faculty of reason for your entire life, you tend to be a little bit pessimistic. Why? Because there's not a lot of life inside of you. So a real person who wants to achieve mastery, at anything in life, it has to balance between the two, the faculty of reasoning and channeling their life force. So for example, if I just sit in there, write on my notebooks and study, what's the meaning of life. You see how I'm just sitting here and I'm using my reasoning, my logic to figure out. The fan is pretty strong today. I don't know. It just knocked down my water bottle. But anyway, you see how I'm sitting here. I'm not channeling my life energy. Because what is life energy? It's movement. It's achieving certain goal. It's the masculine energy is to achieve certain goal in life, is to use that life force to achieve certain things or to do certain things that fulfills your soul. So basically, if I'm using only my logic and my reasoning, I'm not really channeling my life force. I'm using my faculty of reasoning and life and logic. But let's say if I'm doing this, if I'm getting to a fight, right? If I'm like, using something of force, I'm playing sports, or if I'm having sex, I'm actually using my life force, right? If I'm actually channeling life force. So that's when energy flows. But you see how sometimes people lack direction. People lack the ability to channel that energy to the right direction. So that's when reason and logic comes in. So I'm not saying it's either this or that. I'm not saying it's one way or the other, right? You need both in your lives to achieve, to be happy, honestly, to just be energetic, to not be pessimistic, to not be upset about life. You need both, because a lot of people use their life force a lot, but they don't know the right way to channel it. So they end up wasting a lot of that energy. When you upset, when you're like, find yourself sitting at home too much, that's why people on the internet said go outside and touch grass, because that's how you start to get that life force going. And at the same time, that life with you going outside, getting happier, or you do any sort of exercise, running, boxing, going to the gym, you get that life force going, then that will get you happy. It's being trapped inside of you when you're sitting there just trapped in your house all day. When you're young, you have a lot of energy that's inside of you. So that's why a lot of young people especially, they do pranks and they do stuff like, this sort of stuff. Sometimes they could get themselves in trouble. And that's why the ability to reason and to be mature enough to measure your decision is really important as well. Especially as I'm getting older, I realize you can't just. A lot of young people likes to focus on intensity, what I mean by intensity is their training schedule, their way of training, their way of doing, for me, like doing pranks, right? We tend to want to go to the extreme to get the most reaction out of my audience, or you know, which is could be good if you're looking to get views, but sometimes it could backfire, right? A lot of the time your conscience suffer as you offend people in your pranks in my video, right? As you like go about, they're just going about they're just going about their days, and you all of a sudden show up and you kind of, you know, not all the time, but you know, you ruin their day somewhat. It hurts your consciousness, right? It doesn't bring peace to your life. So that's part of the reason why I quit prank. But that goes back to what I talk about, right? It's this energy that's inside of you that hasn't been directed to the most productive way, right? So that's why you sit down and you journal. You use your faculty of reasoning to make all of this make sense, right? To have a structure, have a direction of where this energy is supposed to go to, not just getting up and go about, you just go in there and do whatever you want, just, you know, go hard on everybody, get a reaction out of everybody, just, you know, doing whatever. For me, I would say the best way to do that is to just not get your mind too stimulated, you know what I mean? Not to watch too much short form contents. You guys already know that, right? Like not getting stimulated on social media too much, not jerking off too much, not like just, you know, doing stuff that stimulates your mind, you know. Especially nowadays, people can't focus, you know. Why? It's because people, it's always simulated. When they have to do a task that requires less simulation, that requires more concentration, they have a hard time, really hard time focusing on the task at hand because they're too simulated. Their brain's gonna tell them this shit's boring, right? This is not fun. You know, there's more fun thing to do. Why am I sitting here writing on this paper? Why am I doing this work on my laptop? It's not stimulating. So I was watching Andrew Huberman the other day, right? He was talking about how before you trying to get something done, like a work that requires attention and focus, prior to that you should take boring break, or in between you should take boring break. Not be on your phone, stimulating your brain even more. Because when you do that, you will have hard time getting back on the job, on the task. But when you take boring break in between, you will be more focused after the break. You will find the task more engaging. Yeah, that's one way of channeling your energy, is to not spend it on useless stuff, you know, like shit like scrolling on your phone, watching porn, video games, stuff like this, you know. Like you channeling your energy in the right way. You know, I know a lot of, I don't mean to sound racist, I feel like black people, they're more spiritual in general, honestly. I feel like they just you know, every time you see somebody talk about energy, the stuff like this, it's black people, which makes sense, right? It's not like all woo-woo stuff. I realized today I'm a little bit on that woo-woo side of things, but you know, it's true, right? It's just you have to protect your life force. I don't like calling it energy. I just like to call it life force, right? And yeah, just it comes down to daily practice as well. You know, yeah, because especially if you're not making contents, I don't see the point of being on social media. But yeah, anyway, hope you guys like this video, and see you next time.